Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on back. In this one today, I wanted to revisit Cold War Zombies because this, in my opinion, is one of the greatest zombies modes that we have seen since Black Ops 3. Yet so many people either don't agree or don't care much about this game, so join me as we look back at every feature that this game has to offer. Before this game even came out, a lot of people, including myself, didn't put the bar very high for this game. So many felt worried about the future of Treyarch Zombies since we just came out of the failure that was Black Ops 4. Instead of excitement for a Treyarch Zombies game, for the first time ever, people felt worried and speculative. Then, after we got our first trailer, a lot of expectations switched. The story, gameplay, and additional features all seemed promising. We would get a new story based around the Dark Ether, which is something we had little knowledge of. The old perk system came back with new changes that seemed promising, like the rework for Deadshot, and everything else that was announced, like being able to gain XP and weapon skins for Warzone and MP through zombies, or the new zombie mini-bosses, and return to the classic Nocturne Totem. All was great. Everything seemed very promising for the launch of this new game. Our first map on launch was D Machine, and the map in general was pretty basic. It had some cool features like the Dark Ether mode, but the main focus of this map was to be simplistic for newer players, while also being recognizable for the older players. As a launch map, D Machine does a good job at appealing to all types of players. The standout feature, however, was everything surrounding the map. Upgradable perks, ammo mods, weapons, and specialist abilities added in so much replayability that we have never seen in zombies. For once, players had another reason to kill zombies than just killing zombies. By getting to certain rounds or exfilling out of the map, you could earn Dark Ether crystals to upgrade almost anything that you could use in-game. Exfilling as a feature was also greatly appreciated since it was the first time ever where we saw an end to zombies. The only problem that came out of all these new features was that the game was now really easy. Getting to high rounds was now a joke, because you had an infinite supply of self-revives as long as you could get salvage. Score streaks made you invincible, and the ray gun combined with Ring of Fire was a combo that could destroy anything that comes near you. The launch of Cold War was looking really solid. D Machine as a map wasn't the best, but as a launch map, it brought a lot of new eyes to zombies and is arguably one of the best launch maps added to a zombies game. The upgrade systems with different skill tiers was greatly appreciated from a hardcore standpoint. Everything in-game as well, like weapon tiers that made guns feel equal, and how there was no perk limit or any dumb features that slowed down the progression, was greatly appreciated as well. But most of all, the game was all around just fun. During Black Ops 4, every single map and mode felt like a challenge. With Black Ops Cold War, it felt like old zombies with updated modern systems, and it worked really well. There was also Dead Ops Arcade. It was fun, I guess. Moving not too shortly after the launch, we got our first new zombies map, Firebase Z. And in general, the map wasn't too well received. It wasn't a bad map by any means, but it was definitely a downgrade in comparison to D Machine. The only really big downside with this map was the new mini-boss that was introduced to the map, the Mimics. At first, the idea of a zombie boss that could transform into any object or loot sounded like a very cool idea, and it was. The problem was that Treyarch put way too many on this map. You could just be walking around training zombies, and random pieces of salvage will trap you in place and spawn these guys on you. It's cool when you have to deal with one or two, but in the later rounds, you can get like 20 of these guys spawning in one round. The highlight of this update wasn't actually the map itself, it was the return of an old perk, Tombstone. It now had the abilities of Who's Who, and in general was a lot more useful since you didn't have a perk limit. On the Cold War systems, it acted like a cheap scuff self-revive, which was actually somewhat helpful. It also added in another reason to hop on the game because now you could grind for more Dark Ether crystals and upgrade this perk. Overall, Firebase Z didn't really do much. It wasn't a disappointing update, but compared to the launch features, everything felt slightly worse. The map was slightly worse than D Machine, and the new perk was slightly worse than all the others. So even though it was a respectable update, it just didn't meet up to the hype like D Machine. Only about 2 weeks later, however, we would get another large update for zombies. We got the introduction of a new game mode which would take the zombies community by storm: Outbreak. At first, I wasn't too interested in this mode overall, since it just felt like Fireteam Dirty Bomb from MP, but with zombies. The update I was excited for was the introduction of the 2 new upgrade tiers for all the weapon classes, perks, specialist weapons, and ammo mods, which added a ton of replayability into the game. Before this update, the game was so easy, but there was still some skill involved with certain strategies. But after Outbreak came out, the game felt a little bit too easy since all of your perks, weapons, and ammo mods are now greatly improved. Outbreak as a game mode is heavily underrated in my opinion. I feel like most people in the community either really love this game mode or they really hate it. And I'm on the side of really liking this game mode. It's the most successful game mode that Treyarch has released, since during its peak, more than half of all zombies players were playing on Outbreak over round-based modes. But I think that the big reason for that dispersion was because it was much easier to grind for ether crystals in Outbreak than in round-based zombies. Regardless of how you felt about this mode, it would take the center stage, and the majority of the updates for the remainder of the game would be revolved around Outbreak. We would get new areas, Easter eggs, events, and features throughout Outbreak to make it feel more complete and new, while retaining the main focus of completing objectives. Not only did Outbreak mark a huge change for Cold War Zombies' direction in the future, but it marked a complete rework of the Zombies game mode as we know it today. Then, after months and months of waiting for a new round-based Zombies map, we finally got Malware Der Toten. It was a great addition to Cold War's roster overall, as it had one of the best wonder weapons we have ever seen in Zombies. Paired with a pretty good map layout, it made for an above average Zombies experience. Not the best that we have ever seen, but still a great map nonetheless. We did get the return of Meal Kick, which was nice to see again. Fully upgraded, it was actually a really good perk, as it took some of the effects from Vulture Aid in Black Ops 2. The only problem that I had with this map was that it took way too long for us to get to it. There was a long wait from the release of Outbreak to this map that a lot of people just lost their care for Cold War Zombies. And when it comes to game or map releases, I fully support making sure that the product is good before you release it, even if you have to delay it a bit. But in the past, we would get much more in-depth maps like Der Reisendrak, which were released in a fraction of the time and are much better. While Malware Der Toten in the end was a great map and product, it just took way too much time to release for people to get truly invested. And I'm sure the studio had to switch direction to release content for Outbreak, since that was much more popular and promising as a mode than dumping all their eggs into Malware Der Toten. But it still could have been done a lot better. Instead of releasing Outbreak and Firebase Z back to back, they could have released Outbreak somewhere in between Malware, so it didn't feel like a long break in between maps. Regardless, Malware was the best map that was released in Cold War Zombies, and that's mainly because of the Wonder Weapon and the Easter Egg, which are both very cool and unique. Those who were left behind still invested into Cold War Zombies had very high expectations for the final DLC map in this game. The update for Forsaken was really good, giving us a much better version of Death Perception and a PhD perk machine which hasn't been seen in COD Zombies since Black Ops 2 Mob of the Dead Grief mode. The Wonder Weapon and Easter Egg were on par with Malware Der Toten in being some of the best that this game has to offer. But Forsaken lacks a lot when it comes to map layout. It's hard to navigate this map since it's divided into 3 separate parts and each part is very different from one another, and they aren't connected very well. It just feels like random missions from campaigns slapped together, which doesn't make for a good Zombies map layout. Finding perks can be a pain with all the different buildings that you have to open up, And like I said before, getting from one area to another on this map is incredibly difficult and time consuming, even if you're moving really fast with stamina. Once again, we received a map that has a lot of great features, but sucks as an actual COD Zombies map. The Crystal Axe, although isn't statistically the best in Cold War Zombies, became one of my favorite wonder weapons just because of how cool it is. And the ending cutscene for this Zombies map and game was one of, if not the best that we have ever seen in a Treyarch game. You have the return of Richtofen, which gets players nostalgic and hyped up, and then you have the last cutscene with Peck, which hints at where the story is going to take place next. This ending cutscene wraps up Cold War nicely, while also revealing the future of the Dark Aether storyline. And I'll say it, I thought it was the best ending cutscene that we have seen for a Treyarch game. Even Moon I don't think was as good. As a map, I didn't really like Forsaken, but all the features surrounding the map like the new perk, the boss fights, the wonder weapon, and the Easter egg were all phenomenal and worked together to end Cold War Zombies on a positive note. In conclusion, Cold War Zombies for the most part is a great game, but not in the ways that most people think. When it comes to maps and story, it isn't the best that Treyarch has offered, but when it comes to mechanics and how the game functions, it is, in my opinion, the best Zombies experience that we've had up to date. There have always been problems with the perk system for every game, and Cold War was the first to fix it. Zombies now officially had an ending since you could exfil on any map while on a certain round, which wasn't liked when it first was announced, but it completely changed the way that people played zombies, and in the long run, it was for the better. The problem with Cold War, and why I believe it doesn't have as much attraction compared to other Treyarch games, is because this game is so hard to fully commit to. If you've played D Machine, you've played a good majority of Cold War Zombies, since every other map is almost identical when it comes to quality. And if that quality is mediocre, people just won't care. The only things that get attention are the things that are either really good or really bad. When you have a mediocre map and story, it can be hard for people to get invested into the game. Cold War has the most underrated zombies mode. Most people end up hating it because they don't like the direction that newer zombie games are heading, and Cold War is somewhat to blame for that. But if we look at the price that you have to pay and all the content that you get for buying the game, I definitely believe that it is worth it. And that is why Cold War Zombies is an underrated masterpiece. Anyways guys, it's going to wrap up the video for today. If you did enjoy, leave a like, subscribe, do all that. Leave your comments down below if you want to see me do any other type of content. Check down the description as well for more zombie related videos. And yeah, I got nothing much else to say, so peace.